Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Organizing to Victory podcast, where we're talking garage politics. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Kelly Martinez Semrad, who's currently serving as the Orange County Commissioner for District 5 here in the state of Florida. We're so excited to have a conversation with Kelly because not only is she a close friend, and I even call her my mama in politics, but we're going to be talking about all the ways that the state is attacking our ability to have real home rule in order to combat things like bad growth decisions or ways to diversify our tourism development tax dollars. And in this conversation, we talk about grassroots organizing, inspiring the next generation of political leaders, and how just being with the people is the best way to govern. Here's my conversation with Kelly. So I don't really know if most of the viewers understand how special this guest is who's here today, but Kelly Martinez Semrad is basically like a mom to me from politics, from activism, and from just the birth of the environmental movement here in Central Florida. And it is so special that we have her in my house, in my life, and on my podcast. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. So special that I had to beg for 2 months now, 3 months can I please come on your podcast?
I needed to build the audience. Can I please get an invite? Because if you were one of my first viewers, it would get like 3 views and then it would be disappointing, but I had to build the audience up to be at capacity for you, the goddess. So I'm so excited to talk for many reasons. One, I think you have been just the underdog in politics since we met, Since forever. I think a lot of people underestimate you. I think a lot of people don't know you. I think some people think you're absolutely crazy. I think some people admire and respect you, but don't really know your why. And so we have you here today to kind of break all that down and figure out how you got to a point where you decided, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and not take corporate money and not take developer or tourism money. So first, let's start with the day your light bulb went off and you were like, I have to do this.
The day the light bulb went off, I have to run for office.
Yeah.
That day. So that day is like a Hail Mary day for me, where it was, Either because I had been fighting and advocacy for the environment, for land conservation, for affordable housing, for all the justices, from social justice, environmental, labor, fighting all of them. And you kind of get to a point where you realize I gotta pick one area, because you can't fight everything and win everything. You got to pick one area that you can make a difference in and focus there. And I did that through years of advocacy before running with Save Orange County, and kind of got to a point where it's either I'm going to do the ultimate thing, the ultimate sacrifice that I could do, the ultimate thing that I don't think I can do. And I'm going to do it because I'm at my wit's end. I'm either going to pack up and leave because this is not the place for me to live any longer, because it cannot represent the values that I want to see with land conservation or with a tourism economy that will work for people. And I got to get out, or I got to try to run for office and put my best foot forward and any expertise I have to try to make a difference. So I had 2 things. I'm so sick of the bulldozing and the clear cutting and the lack of land conservation and the irresponsible development. And I also had kind of a moment where, and I told you about it a lot, sitting at a UCF graduation as a UCF teacher, and browsing through the most recent economic report for the nation, and seeing where I live fall within the rest of the states, and whittling it down into Orange County and being I live in the lowest wage market. And I have 2 little kids. At the time, I had a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And thinking, I would never want to graduate my kid into the lowest wage market. We might need to get out of here. And at that time, I heard my student's name walk across the stage to get his diploma. He was super excited. And I just remember saying, why am I okay with graduating anybody's kid into the lowest wage market when I am, I'm a tourism expert and we use it to help alleviate poverty. Why here is it generating it? And maybe I can do something on these two fronts. I can help conserve land and I can help improve our local economy.
Well, you're a transplant into Florida. Like, were you sold a dream of what Florida is before moving here?
No, when I moved to Florida, I had no conscious. I was terrified I moved from Wisconsin. I loved Wisconsin. I came out of rural Wisconsin. I wanted to stay in rural Wisconsin. But I had my mom was a single mom and we struggled financially a lot. And she was a teacher, public school teacher. And the one thing she always told my sister and I was, no matter what happens in life, there's only one thing nobody can ever take from you, and it is your education. And it is important to go as far as you can with education. And I took that so seriously that I went all the way to get a PhD. And so my move to Florida was nothing about I ever wanted to live in Florida. I dread the heat. I love the cold. I dread the humidity, so it was never Florida that enticed me. It was that I was chasing an educational dream, and Florida helped me realize that.
Well, it's funny because we have a few people, the next few podcasts are all going to be about education. And frankly, there are some really good benefits to our local education here. But at the same time, it's met with like culture wars and divestment and other issues. But you came here to pursue an education. You moved into a home. I don't know if I'm skipping a lot. And that home just so happened to be sold to you as this, environmental mecca, and you found out you were in sprawl. Tell us a little bit about unpacking that decision and when you said, I hate bulldozers everywhere.
Yeah. So I I traipsed around Florida for a little bit. So I was down in South Florida, Miami, Broward County, West Palm Beach, then up to Orange County, then to Alachua County because I worked at UF. And at that time when I went to UF, because there's nobody to date in UF when you're a young professor, it's only students and old professors. So the dating scene wasn't great at that time, and I was in my early 30s, and so I went on eHarmony, and I met my current husband right now on eHarmony, and things moved really fast. It's a great program. Anybody who needs to date, eHarmony, it's still out there.
This is not an ad. We do not get ad funding from
probably all sorts of different apps and ads at this point, but no. So things went great. We got married. We were, but we were living distance. I was in Gainesville. He was in Jacksonville, and we needed to find a place where we could both get a job. And I had graduated with my PhD from UCF. So I thought, let me give UCF a chance. Maybe they'd be interested in hiring one of theirs back. And it worked out that way. And my husband, being an engineer, was able to find a job in Orlando. So we started looking for a house, and where we could live together. And we were going to have a blended family of many animals, which included 3 dogs, and 2 of them were mine and very large dogs. So I always had a prerequisite that they have to have space, to run around and to be safe in. I also love nature and I love wildlife. So I did not want to be in a subdivision where we see like the 0 lot lines. And I had always talked about I wanted to go back to rural, like what I lived in. And at that point, we had our budget that we could afford to put together and to buy a house and start our family together. We were actually already married before we could get a place together. And we found a place in East Orange County, and it really marketed itself. It was 1 home per 1 acre, and marketed itself as like what you would call a hobby farm. That you could have chickens and you could have gardening and you could have, all these great things. And we were sold on it. I loved the concept idea. 1 acre, I still wanted more, but at least it was something that what I felt like was, give back to nature instead of taking away from nature. Mm-hmm. And so we made a house purchase in East Orange County.
And I know that you've been, and we'll talk all about, a defender of the rural boundary and an advocate. Like, I think people hear rural boundary and they see your face, but you were attacked a lot on the campaign trail about living in a subdivision that, represents exactly what you're fighting. Mm-hmm. When did you move in and think like, oh, this isn't quality of life?
Yeah, well, first of all of those jabs that, I got, I would take them all day long. Because quite frankly, I totally believe it as well. Like you're advocating for one thing, yet you're living in what you say that you don't. And, where I live, it was built 20 years ago. And when we purchased that house, we believed what we were told we were going to get until, like we moved, and it was interesting because we closed on Friday the 13th. And on that same day, there was a sign that went up on these beautiful pastures that said, land use change, and that there was a public meeting that was going to be coming. And so I was like, I wonder what that is all about. And I honestly, I knew nothing about zoning. I knew nothing about land use. I would say that I would have been a land conservationist all my life and an environmentalist also all my life. But I thought, I'm going to go to the meeting. And so I went to the meeting, and there was this group that was there. It was Save Orange County. They were wearing these shirts. In fact, this is like 20 years ago now.
That's a 20-year-old shirt. 20
years, still fighting to stop urban sprawl. So, but I went to the meeting, and, here I am, I'm listening to like everything that this developer wants to do on this big parcel of land. And it was two developers, Lake Pickett North and Lake Pickett South. And it was nothing but like really tiny little like 50-foot lots outside of the urban service area. So there's no water, there's no sewer, there's no infrastructure to support it, both hard or soft infrastructure. But so you could listen to the idea and be like, that's outrageous that they're asking for that. But at the same time, what I also was hearing was the public commentary that was coming from the people, and listening to them say, like, we're losing this fight out here. And I was like, what fight? Where's their fight? I always love a good fight. Where's the fight? So, and then hearing, say, my great grandfather turned this soil with his hands. I'm a seventh generation, person who lives in Christmas or in this area. And I listened to this story, and at that point in time, I was like, I don't know if I should like stand up and speak. So I was also going to speak against the development, or if we should just pack up and sell our house. Mm-hmm. Because while we live in one home per 1 acre hobby farm, the development that was being proposed was an agri-hood. And it's an urban agricultural themed development where you get a garden box in your front yard, which your front yard is only about 10 to 15 feet big, so it's not a deep yard or anything like that. So, and I kind of like, I went to that community meeting. I went to the next community meeting. And at that point in time, I said to my husband, like, should we just pack up and go? Like, this is not what we didn't want to buy into this. But we decided, he was like, whatever you want to do, I'll do. But I kind of made a decision like, well, if I sell my house, somebody's going to buy it. And I can join this fight, and I can help prevent, more of it happening. The neighborhood where I live was approved in the 90s for some type of citrus disease that happened and wiped out portions of East Orange County citrus. And there are, I think, 12 parcels that are like that. So right now you see a couple of them are being developed, but there are more that will come. And then in addition to, you have these large swaths of land like the Deseret Ranch and the Lake Pickett North and South that also want to develop. And it will very soon just look like nothing more than suburbia.
And a lot of times when you go to these community meetings, they're saying, oh, well, it's just dead citrus grove. So it's not pristine 100-year-old oaks. Mm-hmm. So they try to negate the environmental movement from there. Then you say, well, there's no water infrastructure. Like, people are going to be flushing toilets into septic tanks that are, destined to overflow or not be kept up well, mm-hmm. which is going to go into our aquifer. I mean, once you start pulling back the veil of all the implications, you start to realize, like, these developments, if they continue to be approved at these rapid rates, they don't keep up with the infrastructure. But then you look at the money and you realize, oh, it's actually costing us more money to continue subsidizing all of this sprawl while the developer gets to just walk away making massive profits probably selling the land to the next, HOA or organization, and then being able to just indefinitely make a profit and take all that money out of our local economy and leave the long-term maintenance on our backs.
Yeah. So it comes down to, it's either going to be an environmental cost where you do get the places that are one home per 1 acre, because they're going to be on septic and they're going to be on well. That's what I'm on. But septic isn't good for the environment. And all these little straws going down into our aquifer isn't good for our water either. So you're either going to get that type in that area, or you're going to get the hard dollar cost, like where we see this development called The Grow, Lake Pickett South, that we lost. We sued the county for urban sprawl and won in court, and still lost when Governor Rick Scott and the Attorney General Pam Bondi overturned 90 legal lines to make a legal verdict against what we won in court, and this development got to go in. But why we even were able to win in court was because of the cost of the infrastructure for taxpayers. Because the developer, yes, they pay impact fees or prop shares, and that's supposed to offset the cost of their infrastructure, but it's not possible to. So in the instance of The Grow, we hear from staff that the all-in cost for the sewer lines, the irrigation or the reclaimed water, the water line itself, everything that's going in, it's like $500 million to get something like that up off the ground. And the developer doesn't pay $500 million. So,
simultaneously to that, they capped impact fees around the same time, which means that you can't charge the developer basically the inflation costs, because these costs, they go up over time, like things are not cheap. Labor needs to go up in order to be competitive. There's so many costs that continue to go up, and yet the developers are capped at how much we can charge them for those long-term maintenance costs. And the new growth isn't paying off the costs.
Growth doesn't pay for itself. It's proved it time and time again. In order for growth to pay for itself, you've got to build vertically. You cannot build out with this urban sprawl style of mentality. And until you get politicians who tell developers, no, you can't do that, we're going to continue to see ourselves upside down, where you build a unit. And even though now we're charging 100% impact fees, but we're so far behind the 8 ball because they were discounting impact fees for developers for so many years that you have to approve like development B to help pay for the deficit on A in the infrastructure. And then you approve C to help pay for B's deficit, and then D. And it's just this big Ponzi scheme where Orange County is chasing its tail all of the time because they've made really irresponsible growth decisions.
And we lose because ultimately then even those new residents get flooded out because they're not being responsibly, considered. Rainfall is going up because of climate change, which some of our own planners do not believe in. And the formula for how they quantify the amount of water, to offset and mitigate on a property has been really antiquated, and are just now the conversations are being had on how do we, make sure that we're properly quantifying the full volume of water. But people are getting flooded out. And the thing is that though,
well, not only that, you're getting flooded out. So now you got to have flood insurance. Your property insurance is going up. Politicians in Tallahassee keep failing to address the root cause. It's irresponsible growth and development. But now the Board of County Commissioners is taking votes to increase stormwater management fees. In terms of your waste, your solid waste, your garbage goes up, your reclaimed water goes up.
Oh, you
your
see is raising rates.
Electricity, yes, goes up. So this isn't just, we flood. That's a big part of it. And that has a huge expense to it, but we're paying more and more and more in our taxes. Even I think on Tuesday, we're having it come to the dais again to talk about raising taxes on Orange County citizens to help pay for infrastructure deficits. And this one is a little more interesting because it also adds or could add an element of land conservation. So you pay a penny and you help pay into a pot to buy more land to conserve it, which is an interesting twist. But, I just get sick of talking about raising our taxes when most of us are the ones who are saying we're so sick of overdevelopment. But the politicians don't hear it. They keep approving it.
So let's go back, because I know we're going to go there, and I'm so excited to dive into that conversation. But you're mobilizing. At that point, you go to your first community meeting, you meet the Save Orange County, like predominantly farmers and rural families that are trying to defend their way of life against the sprawl. You realize I bought into sprawl and I was kind of duped by how they marketed this subdivision and the future subdivisions, trying to claim it's going to be an agro hood. And frankly, it's just going to be more of the same suburban sprawl. And then you start getting more active with Save Orange County. You know, I do activism in campaigns now, but when I first met you, I was a brand new baby in doing that work. And I could only dream to mobilize 100 people to a Board of County Commission meeting. And it was something you were literally doing pregnant and then with a newborn and then with your kids, like reading and coloring on the floor of the Board of County Commission chambers. And I remember seeing that and just thinking to myself, like, if I could do that, I could save the world. Because you also, regardless of partisanship, are able to have conversations with people and say, I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican. We might disagree on this list of things, but we'll keep that out. What we need to focus on today is what's right in front of us, the immediate risks. And it has altered the course of everything here in Orange County, in my opinion, because the same people could be continuing to run saying that they're good old boy farmers, that they care about the farmers, and then they just sell out the community because they're getting duped. But you were able to penetrate into communities, being a progressive Democrat, and say, they're lying to us. Your own party, and Democrats do it too, but in this case, your own party has been lying to you for generations. Let's fight together. Let's get some Democrats like Emily Bonilla elected, and let's toe the line against this sprawl as a unified fight. That is so hard to accomplish. And you did it for how many years?
Almost 2 decades. It's a long time. But you know what? It's you see it that way. But you know, like, there's pictures of me in the shirt. You're right. Like from the time of like the pre-mama body, you know, like I'm thinner, to being pregnant, to holding a baby, being pregnant, and then even holding 2 babies, you know. So I'm in this shirt in a lot of different phases of my life. But you know what that's, in all honesty, if I'm really honest, because it's hard, you know, that was hard work. And those people on Save Orange County's board, it's not me. We were all there. We were there till 2 a.m. in the chambers. We were in meetings till 12 a.m. We've been together so long that the people who had children when I first joined the board, those children are now babysitting my children. That's how long we have been together and fighting this fight. But what got me through those doors, because it's no secret, it's a conservative Republican board, you know, Save Orange County. What got me through that, I was very honest up front. I said, you guys, I think I'm part of the problem. And for them, they were like, no, you know, that's an entitled property. We always knew that was coming. It's 1 acre and you do have a hobby farm, you know, like that they always knew. So they were more receptive. So that gave me that. But I felt incredibly guilty. And all those long nights there, what kept me going and what fueled my passion was I needed to, if those developments went in, that when I put my head on the pillow, I could actually say to myself, you know, whether somebody wants to say, oh, your house purchase is, you know, a mistake, or, you know, we did it. And, but I could say that I fought like crazy with the community and that I did everything possible that I could do to try to make it right for the people like the Bobby Beagles who had been out there for, you know, like his family has been out there forever. There are other families who've been out there for 7 generations, that at least I could put my head on the pillow and you know, and just rest, knowing that, you know, I fought with everybody. I did my best. And for a long time, you Save Orange County would be like, I don't know where you get your energy from. But I think that what fueled that energy was a lot of guilt and trying to make things right.
Well, you channeled it, and you channeled it across partisan lines, and you still are keeping that fight going and using it as an education tool to bridge the gap between people. Because every single podcast I've had so far, we've talked about like, how could Democrats improve? And I think the best way Democrats can improve right now is by showing up. Like, look at Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith, who formerly, when he was a representative, he is an open LGBTQ, Hispanic representative who is vocal about things that I know the conservative board of Save Orange County is not necessarily about, but because he shows up, they see him as their champion.
He's also one of the only Democrats, I think, in the state that Save Orange County has ever endorsed. And in a partisan race. Like, I am a Democrat and I was endorsed by Save Orange County, but I ran in a nonpartisan seat.
And you're so unapologetic about how you just walk into a room and you're like, we're not going to agree on that. And that's okay. But I'm here to talk to you about what I know you're passionate about, because I'm here with you in this fight. And this is how we're going to beat this. And if every Democrat took a page out of that book, not just Democrat, I just hate that we have to use Democrat and Republican terms.
Me too.
An elected official in general needs to be responsible for picking up the phone and taking constituent calls, meeting with their people and being a liaison between government services, and frankly, showing up to their front lines of whatever fight that they're fighting, whether it's for a sidewalk or a stop sign or a huge development about to take and suck up all their water. Regardless of affiliation, they need to show up. And so, you spent 20 years doing this with Save Orange County, and then Commissioner Emily Bonilla at the time was terming out. And
she was actually part of Save Orange County.
She was part of Save Orange County.
Back in the day.
And it's like, you called me one day and I was in the car up in Tallahassee, actually fighting the Florida Communities Trust Board vote on moving the application for the linear facility through Split Oak. And I'm in my car. Everyone is having a lunch, licking our wounds after that vote. And you call me and you're
Awful
like,
vote.
You're like, Lee. I remember there was a lot of silence. And you're like, I am doing it.
I was so pissed. So pissed at that vote.
So let's talk about the guilt that drove you to organize Save Orange County, and then the anger that drove you to run for office.
Okay, so the guilt on the Save Orange County, I just wanted to be like, that's what fueled those late nights. That's what fueled me as a mama, being like, it's okay that my kids are here coloring on the floor of the Board of County Commission chambers at midnight, waiting so I can get my 2 minutes to talk. That's what fueled that. And I'm so grateful, and humbled that I had that opportunity, and I still have that opportunity. I still proudly wear the shirt. But that time when I called you about running for mayor, right?
It was after. It was for Emily's seat. You were like, Emily's terming out. I'm doing it.
Yeah. So that was just, it was a culmination of so many votes where you feel like you're in a boxing ring and you take like a punch, you're like this and then like that. And there was Split Oak Forest, there was Sustany, there was the Grow, there was other developments that were happening out in the West. And it was Deseret Ranch was starting to not just simmer anymore, but it was starting to boil. And then I didn't even know how bad it was boiling, because that's the same election cycle where Deseret Ranch, Tavistock, and the city of Orlando tried to annex all the land out of the rural boundary that Save Orange County and the community had tried to build for like way more years than I had ever even been there. So yeah, I just called you and I was like, I had to do something, or I had to get out. I was at that point of like breaking, where I was so angry that I was either going to throw my hands up in the air and say, I fought a good fight and I'm done for mental health, I got to be done. Or I'm going to go a little bit more crazy and I'm going to run for office. I took the more crazy route and met you on the path.
And it was so funny too, because, when you're an environmentalist, it's so hard, because like my why is all the roadkill.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why, just spiritually, and maybe everyone does, but we just suppress it. Like spiritually, animals and just our ecosystems, even if I don't go out in nature for years because I'm trapped behind my computer screen, it calls to me, and it really mentally messes me up when I see roadkill. And that is the driving force of like my why. But when you do interviews and you're fighting, there is no legislation or local policy that really defends animals.
Right. Just so you know, roadkill kills me too. I hate it.
But we can't talk about it.
I check it's so disgusting. I check the mama possum, like if I see it was a mama, to make sure that there's no babies in her pouch. That's roadkill is hard, and it's infuriating.
Yeah. And I mean, like, because, growing up Native American, like my mom used to pull over and like we would harvest like the feathers from hawks and like turn it into jewelry or because it would be the way that you can commemorate that animal's life and thank it for its time here. And so that was always the way that I grew up, being like, why are we just driving by this massacre and not saying anything? Yeah. It's like if we saw all of these children dying in Gaza and we're just like scrolling past and not even saying anything or paying attention to it.
Isn't that what we do though? Well,
I think we can talk through like how much it inspired a whole movement, but like, where's the movement for the roadkill? Like that's my thing. But then you do all these interviews and you learn very quickly as an activist that you have to talk about the economic costs of these issues and the challenges with your future drinking water and the poison in your drinking water that's causing cancer and early onset Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all these things. You have to find a way to bring it to the human's immediate needs, or else they don't frankly care enough to mobilize 100 people to the dais. Maybe it might be a small piece of what moves people, but it's really the threats of their immediate tabletop issue that causes people to get up and go. And in that work, like you have to find a way to drive the why in other people. So you go from Save Orange County, then you say, I'm going to run. And we're like, okay, Kelly has all this heart for the environment, but let's figure out a way to tie your expertise in tourism economies and tie your expertise in land use, because you've been doing this now for 20 years. And let's find a way to make it an immediate call to action for people to vote for you, which got you elected.
It did. It was such a weird marrying of events too, or topics, because and you know how people in your life are put into your life for like a reason, a season, or what's the other one? A
reason, season.
There's a third. Lifetime?
Tell us.
A reason, a season, or a lifetime. Okay, so we can't do this for 2 hours.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. I got this perfect reason of a situation that happened in my life that actually helped us tie this whole thing together, from tourism economies, poverty, wildlife, roadkill, and trying to defend urban sprawl. And it comes down to this, is that when I was in college, I took a class because I thought I wanted to be a conservation biologist. I was sold on it. I believed it. And maybe I was going to end up being a vet one day, but I wanted to do something to help save habitat or to help those that were injured that needed to go back into habitat. That was my dream. So I took this biology course, and it was all about how we're going to save the rhinos, in Africa, because they're being poached illegally. And so we go through and talk about ecology and how the systems and everything has to align to perfectly flourish so that everybody has its food chain. It was very scientific based. But at the very end, he gets us to this point of like, so ultimately, if the environment is perfect to sustain it, how then are you going to defeat, because you had an environmental problem that was killing the rhino and you've got illegal poaching. So if you can fix everything environmentally, how are you going to defeat the poachers who you've got a tribe? Because in Africa, people still are living in a tribal system in places. You have a tribe where a poacher comes and says, I will pay you $10,000 if you will let me hunt that rhino. And $10,000 to that tribe seems like so much money that they take it. But the value of having the rhino there and actually getting people to come from around the world to study it, to see it, you'll make more money off of that than $10,000 in the short term. So he's like, so how are you going to stop the poacher was the end question for this conservation biologist professor. And he just left us hanging. And I was like, but wait. Like, how do you do it? I want to do it. How do I do it? And he said, for that, you've got to take an economics course because you've got to know the value. And that's how we tied everything together is that until you give nature a value, a dollar sign, you can't get everybody always on the same page to save it. Until you can quantify how much urban sprawl costs everybody, you can't get all people to want to stop it. But as soon as we put dollar signs in front of nature and we say, this is what Mother Nature, this natural engineer, saves you or gives you or is worth, you can't get protection around it. Mm-hmm. And the environment doesn't win enough because we haven't quantified its value enough. Mm-hmm. And we live in a capitalistic society where everything is about making money. So, well, we got to have it be that our nature makes money. And so what we were able to do with the campaign is say like, hey, here you've got a person who specializes in tourism economies and alleviating poverty. But I also have another flair in that I quantify the value of a coral reef, from an environmental economic perspective. So I can say, this is how much that coral reef is to protect it versus having it being destroyed, by irresponsible overfishing or whatever it may be. This is how much the sea turtle brings to you in the form of tourism. So we were able to close that gap by basically saying, one is that tourism should be working for people, not private gains. It should be a public asset. And two, that nature does indeed have value and it is an economic resource and it does save us money. And we were able to kind of marry all those things into a package that you sold.
Well, I feel like...
Good job.
I feel like you were an easy package to put a bow on it and sell to the community. I think, I think this might get me in trouble. Legislators at every level should have some qualifications. And I think economics should be like the first thing, because I think what ends up happening is a developer or a group like Mosaic or a utility company will come with like their language in a bill. And even if there's no corruption, meaning like that legislator is getting a direct contribution from said industry, they still might think, oh, well, you're an expert, so you must be telling me the truth. But to an industry like the phosphate mining industry, of course they're going to save money by dumping all of their, radioactive byproduct into, Piney Point and into our sea, our ocean. But no one is quantifying the impact of the dying coral reefs. Mm-hmm. No one's quantifying the dying, almost going extinct now, manatees. And what that does to our ecotourism. How many people are coming here to see those manatees from all over the world? That's stimulating our economy in a different way. Instead, it's a cost savings in their eyes to continue to dump, extremely hot and toxic water from the FPL utility into the Indian River Lagoon, or to continue to allow all these septic tanks to just stay putting poop into the Indian River Lagoon. They're sold a metric when they're writing policies that basically scream the loudest in the room than the metrics that go silent, like the environmental impact and the ecological impact, or the ecotourism that could be driving more resources and stimulating more. Perfect example of this is what's coming up soon, the Visit Orlando fight. Mm-hmm. Visit Orlando spends a lot of money, basically subsidizing the tourism industry in order to showcase parks that already have enough revenue to showcase their own marketing. And yet they could be an asset in highlighting some of these environmental economic drivers, like all of our trails, all of our,
well, to be
springs.
fair, we do have that shooting with them, and some of the ecological sites, but I think it's just a political smear campaign to make it look like they care.
Yeah, because the dollar for dollar, that's what I like about you, is you will sit there and be like, I'm going to do the dollar for dollar assessment myself and then compare to other sister cities that have comparable populations to us and be able to prove in the numbers how we're failing, on our transportation, on our tourism investments, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me that we, again, talking about this sales tax increase, that we're going to talk again about raising sales taxes on people when we sit on $350 million a year of tourism tax money that goes specifically and only into capital improvements in entertainment structures like the convention center, the Kia Center, Camping World Stadium. We do support the arts, and that's great. There's more funding than what has been there before, but why can we not use it for our mass transit system so that it's functional? Tourists would use it too. Why can we not use it for that? Why can't we use it to improve the quality of our water? Tourists drink it too. We can say that it has to be used for tourism and residents, but every single day we've got 210,000 tourists living amongst us. So they are using indeed everything that we use while we live here.
And like I said, about who does the data analysis and who controls the narrative, right? So when we have these conversations, there are certain consulting firms that put together these pretty packages of data that say, look at all these businesses and how happy they are from, Visit Orlando's investments or from, all of these economic drivers in the tourism corridor. But they're not also quantifying how much underfunding, how many small businesses have closed, how many people can't make rent because they're not getting paid a living wage from the tourism corridor. What other costs are we subsidizing in our pantries and in our homeless services for the very people that the tourism corridor is hiring and, providing jobs for?
Right. And, so here's the thing. So let me think. It was in the year of 2000 and we've been notoriously low across the nation for wages for more than a decade, and I've been tracking it little by little by little. At the time when I decided to run, we were the lowest. We've improved to 49th at this point in time. But one of the things we just don't ever calculate or consider are the social costs of a industry that could be used to help alleviate poverty, but instead, it pays low wages and it's a generator of poverty, and there are social costs when you have a local economy that is serving private interests and it's not giving public gains. And those costs then become very costly for all taxpayers. And at the same time, then you get criticized by the state who says under DeSantis with the Florida Doge or the Florida FAFO that you're increasing costs in social programs. Well, you have to increase costs of social programs when you have a local economy that drives poverty.
Yeah, you taught me a term called the leakage effect. I think we were walking around in Disney Springs and I was like, are all these businesses local? Where the heck are these businesses from? And you were like, that's called the leakage effect. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So generally speaking, whenever you have an economic impact, the more money that you can contain in your local economy that you bind up here so that it doesn't leak out, it's a bigger impact that you can generate. So when we see, for example, the Airbnb market is a really good example of a market that has high leakage effect because most of the owners of Airbnb homes are not local owners like me or like you. They could be corporations or they're going to be people who are, quite frankly, they're snowbirds. And every time that somebody stays in the Airbnb, that the most amount of money that it makes is a leakage. It leaves our local economy. Now, they might use local cleaners to clean it or a local management company or something like that. But the greatest amount of revenue leaves our local economy.
And that is the fight, ironically, that I hear a lot of conservative Republicans make about immigrants. That immigrants are just sending all of our money abroad and not contributing to our local economy. Whereas immigrants, for example, are the foundation of our local economy, especially here in a tourism centric, community.
Yeah, so unless you're 100% Native American, you are an immigrant to the United States of America. So, and I don't know of too many 100% Native Americans anymore. We are a nation of immigrants. Now, how people arrive to that status of going from an immigrant to being a citizen, is where now we're all tangled up in the mess of what's going on. But unless people, I saw a receipt, and it said immigrants don't run this country, but we make this country run. And it was on the receipt in a restaurant, and it was primarily a Mexican restaurant, and it is a perfectly stated sentiment of exactly what our workforce is. Unless you're willing to pick up a shovel and get into a ditch in the sun and dig, or go and pick our crops, or be a maid in a hotel, or be a chef in a restaurant. I mean, it's unfortunate to say, but there are people who come to this country for an opportunity and are willing to work in those jobs to try to get to the next level of opportunity. But there are not many Americans who are willing to pick up that shovel or drop to their knees in a field and start picking and digging for crops.
In the heat.
Yep.
But I look at that and I hear everything that you say, and it's a breath of fresh air, because I brought this up before. Sometimes when you listen to an elected official, it sounds like there's a veil, like they don't understand that pain, that sweat, even the economic factors. And hearing you sound like the biggest threat to one of the largest economic drivers here, the tourism industry, from everything you say, from all the propaganda that's coming down from the state legislature. Don't you feel sometimes like you're going to be, pointed out and attacked? I mean, there was even a threat for you to be removed.
I think we had 3 threats. Yay. We got a threat. No. So to the tourism industry, I think that they look at me as threatening because they think that my ideas are radical. But I don't think that when a local economy works for local people, that's radical. I think that's what's supposed to happen. And if they want to be the largest player in our economy, and they are, and they do want to be it, then you must assume the largest amount of responsibility for the productivity and the health of that economy. And right now, being 49th in the nation for the lowest wages, who else can we blame? You're the largest portion of our economy. It's not the Orange County Public Schools. It's not the government. It's not, the fintech that is here. It's tourism, So, but they look at that as threatening when you state facts. But I'm actually very pro-tourism, because you can use tourism to alleviate poverty. You can use tourism to have the best public transit system in the world if you want. You can use tourism to save natural resources. There are so many good things that you can use tourism for, and you can have both private gains, but you can also improve the quality of life of your people with it and your economy. And if people think that that's threatening for somebody to say, then they're likely the people who are gaining privately, and they want to keep it to themselves. They don't have an interest in seeing tourism serve the local community.
Well, there's been attempts in the past of, Disney and the tourism industry, like fighting over Bright Line stops, which could significantly delay the Bright Line progression. There's been fights over whether or not we're going to diversify our transportation, because frankly, it's a threat if tourists leave the parks and the iDrive corridor and go to Winter Gardens Farmers Market or Eatonville's historic centers, or, if tourism starts to leave, then that's impacting their leakage.
Yeah.
We're taking money away from their pocketbooks and bringing it into our local economy. So there have been tremendous strides to, try and keep the tourists in their area, but then, they use our landfill, they use our water, they're in our traffic with us on I-4 when you're, away from your family or late to work. A lot of tourists are on that road. And just this year, there was a study that said that Florida was like one of the top most disappointing tourism
in
destinations.
the top 5. I think it was Orlando is in the top 5. It was, granted, you always have to consider the source and the data and stuff like that. And I don't know what any of that was. I saw that it was done by like a suitcase company or a baggage packing company of some sort. But yeah, it came in. Orlando was in the bottom 5 for most disappointing destinations because of the cost, traffic.
Yeah, and how much time they spent in a car and having to rent a car, which is another huge expense. Like I just went to Berlin, Germany, and every time I mentioned I was from Florida, they would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And they have 4 million people in Berlin. And according to our comprehensive plan, by 2030, we hope to have, 4 million people as well here. We currently have about 2 million people, residents in Orange County around, but our transportation is nowhere near what it is in Berlin, Germany. I mean, you can go to a bus stop, to a trolley stop, to the subway at any point, not look at your watch, and know within 6 minutes a train or a bus is coming to take you to your destination, because that's how timed everything is and synchronized. By the time Vision 2050, I said 2030, 50, by the time that we get to that 4 million person point in 2050, our transportation needs are going to be so broken and insolvent if we don't start doing something right now, which means to me that Disney, that Universal, that all the tourism corridor, they should also be seeing with their economists the writing on the wall and be huge contributors back into those local investments, because it will help more tourism for them to keep their profits, going. The investment now will help with the projected revenue. Am I just an idiot who's talking out of my butt? Or
No. So you're absolutely right. Like, one of the big things or reasons why people decide not. So you say, hey, let's go on a vacation. And usually we come up with like 2 or 3 destinations we're considering. Traffic is always a consideration. So is public safety. So public safety is a consideration. Am I going to be safe when I get there? And am I going to be able to get around once I'm there? And if we keep going down the road that we're going, where we are Carlando, and we're going to have 4 million people, and they're all going to be trying to get on a road because we have such a dysfunctional mass transit system, I probably at that point in time won't be living in Orange County if that's where we go, because it'll simply, I don't think we would ever get anywhere on time. And I think that the amount of time that we would be spending in the car would be more than sitting probably at home.
And I hear your sentiments about the sales tax, which I also agree. It's a regressive tax. There's so much money that we can't tap into because the state just stopped our ability to, diversify those funds. I know there's other attempts, like Senator Carlos Guillermo-Smith is trying to, pass another bill in order to get us local control over that money. But as of right now, those infrastructure projects, how do we continue to justify that? Like, what metrics are they looking at that a convention center and arenas and infrastructure for these huge, conglomerate buildings? What's the return? I don't understand the return.
So it's our TDT, our tourism development tax money. And when it was made, when it was created, the bill served its purpose. The law served its purpose. The purpose was to be able to generate revenue where you wouldn't have general obligation bonds on communities. So you would not have to pay into a convention center for your entire lifetime of living in Orange County. They would find a way to tax the tourists to help build the convention centers or to help build the entertainment. And it was great. And it worked, and it served its purpose. But what it was addressing was a deficit in the destination, a lack of infrastructure in the destination was entertainment facilities. Well, now it's an antiquated system. It's almost a half a century year old that we created this tax for that reason. We have built the facilities, we have maintained them, we have upgraded them. Now where the infrastructure deficit is transit and transportation. So tourist tax revenue is used to address infrastructure deficits. Where do we need it? Do you need water? Okay. Do we need more electricity? Okay. Do we need more dump? The landfill? What do we need? That money should be doing that because it helps keep the destination pristine so that tourists want to return to it, so that they go home and they tell their friends to go visit it, so that they will come back over the course of time. But special interests are controlling the perception of what that tax should be used for. And they've got it so far, they really truly believe it should only be used to expand the convention center. It should only be used for Camping World Stadium. It should only be used for Kia Center. It should only be used minimally to support the arts. But you will ultimately hurt your bottom line when tourists say, I'd love to go to Orlando, but the last time I was there, it took me an hour and a half to get anywhere. I'm not doing that again. I can just go here instead.
Yeah.
And that is what will happen. And we will begin to see our arrival numbers slide. Additionally, we're trying to host 75 million tourists a year. Well, we're running out of water. What are your tourists going to think when they're sitting in a Michelin restaurant and they find out that in Orange County, our water supply comes from direct potable reuse, or will in the future, which is converting sewage water to drinkable water?
Caca water.
Yeah, caca water. So how does that impact, So like if they're not interested in conserving land and helping us replenish the aquifer, get prepared to have to explain to your tourists that their noodles were boiled in caca water, converted caca water, caca water.
Well, I remember being in Berlin, they actually had signs that said like, Berlin's drinking water straight from the tap is like pristine water. And you could research like all the ways that they have invested in the infrastructure to keep their water from the tap to be like ultra filtered. Mm-hmm. And that was like a marketing point. But I feel like we've continued to sell out our ability to like, invest in things like that. We don't have enough money to keep up with the infrastructure to have awesome water quality. In fact, you have communities in your own district that have cancer in their water.
Carcinogens. Yep. Bithlow. Wedgefield dealing with water quality issues as well.
And how long have they been fighting to get at least something out there?
50 years more, probably more. So to get relief. So, I mean, and it's so ignorant to think that the tourist is not foot smart and is all around our community all of the time. Tourists don't just want to come and sit, in Disney World and do a theme park for days on end. They also want to get out and go see places like Split Oak Forest, or go down the Econ, go kayaking, go airboating. They want to also engage in the nature. So, it's such a missed. We have the most amount of arrivals for tourists in the entire nation, 75 million. And the fact that we have one of the lowest TDT rates, tourism development tax rates, we're not charging enough for people to be here, first of all. And secondly, that we're going to talk about raising taxes on us when you have the opportunity to find a way to tax 75 million other people who don't live with you. And let me tell you, nobody's not coming to Disney World because you tax them an additional penny on a dollar.
Yeah.
That's not happening. And so for special interests to think that that's the case, I used to think like maybe they're just dumb, it's dumb, it's greedy. I don't know. Like, nobody's not coming to Orlando because you tax them one extra penny so that there's a functional mass transit system.
There's something innately broken with our capitalistic society where so many industries are just short-term thinkers. They don't want to invest a little bit more in the upfront, which will have a greater return, because they're so focused on looking at those quarterly, profits, that they're so scared to come to the table and be like, I'm going to be a partner with you. I remember during your time on the campaign trail, they attacked you from every angle, throwing your own white papers at you, yelling at you when you're like, I'm literally contracted all over the world to do this work. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to use my own data against me. Let's really roll up our sleeves and talk about this. And many of their, CEOs stormed out of the room because they didn't want to be confronted with the truth.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
There's a huge opportunity though. But there's good news because like we see now that there are some of the really big hotel shareholders who are actually saying, we're going to lose profit if we don't fix this transit system, and actually coming to the table and trying to create a new tax, the TTT, transportation.
That's because of you, Kelly.
Tourism transportation tax.
You made it news. You made it.
No. Scott Maxwell made that all news.
It was a concerted effort. I really feel like you put it in their face, and you have been relentless in the affordability conversation and in the economics. And I bet you they probably went and took your white papers to their, they probably contracted and said, can you prove her wrong? And they were like, actually, she's right.
No, you can always prove somebody wrong. No, but I've never said anything that's not true. You can use tourism to help alleviate poverty. You can use tourism to improve infrastructure, and you can use tourism to save natural resources. And it's proven over and over and over, and not just by me, by great scholars all over the world.
And when I brought up the consequences of the short-term thinking within different industries, even within our state government, this year, especially last year and the year before, every legislative session, there's egregious bills to stop home rule and to restrict local governments from being able to control their own growth. I think when money infiltrates our politics, what ends up happening is that short-term thinking goes into our political structure, where our government is supposed to be holding these companies responsible to make sure we don't become insolvent and go into these massive deficits, which are happening all across the state. And this year in particular, it feels like an atom bomb is going off, where we have, we had Senate Bill 180 last year. This year, it just feels like, the Blue Ribbons Project, they're trying to force us to approve huge developments in the middle of the wildlife corridor or in the middle of agricultural areas, not helping farmers be able to recoup any losses from losing their citrus or instead give farmers an easy way to sell out to a developer so that the development lobby can make their return and push these bills to make extreme profits.
So, you bring up a really good point, and it just made me had this moment. So, Republicans right now, so we're Democrats, right? So from party politics perspective, we look at Tallahassee, who is primarily Republican. It's Republican.
Super majority.
Super dupers. And we think, the Republicans are the bad guys because they're casting all these really bad votes, right? And it's votes that go against the environment, go against clean water, go against sustainable development, affordable housing. It's against stuff that everybody, regardless of party, will agree we want to save. There are so many Republicans who are concerned about wildlife and conserving land and building responsibly. So many. But the Republicans get these bad, we think it's the Republicans that are the bad guys, but I actually think that in the world of politics, you've got Democratic values, you've got Republican values. They're not separate of one another, but it's an interpretation and a perception. And then you got greed and you got money. And whatever political party moves into control, that greed and that money tries to put people in the positions that will just simply do their bidding, but they have to put a D or an R behind their name to get elected. And I really believe that right now we've got people in Tallahassee who just put an R. I don't even think they're political. I don't even think that they have some political values. I think that what they're put there for is motive, which is greed and profit. And that because they put an R behind their name, we do a big slam that it's all Republicans doing this. It's money and greed is going to attack whatever party is in control. And they're going to put people there intended to do their bidding with just the right letter behind their name.
Yeah. I mean, the duopoly of partisanship has been a perfect conduit for keeping people divided and not working together like you've been able to do with Save Orange County to mobilize against something and actually get some wins. And, if you look at the party infrastructure here in Florida, the Florida Democratic Party has like no money. They're barely helping, candidates actually win across the state. The Republican Party is also kind of a mess, in lots of infighting. Very little actual help for candidates.
The local party or the state?
No, across the state and the local party. But what ends up happening is The lobbyists and the developers and the super PACs are who recruit and hire consultants to help these candidates actually get across the finish line, so that when they're in Tallahassee, they get handed a bill by the private industry, and then they just move that bill. They keep us fighting. They keep us saying, I don't like Dems, I don't like Republicans. But really, the people who are pulling the strings are the super PACs and the mega corporations that are handpicking the candidates themselves and supporting them through mega consultants, et cetera. And it's really disheartening because a candidate like you know, a mom, no political experience, but a big heart and just, 20 years of fighting at the Board of County Commission meeting on land use issues. You didn't have the party's support. You didn't have a group that said, let's wrap resources around you.
In the beginning, but in the end,
Yeah, towards the end, when we proved, I had some people say, like, don't support her. She's just not political, and she doesn't know anybody. She can't raise the money. She's not viable as a candidate because you didn't have, I don't know, a couple $100,000 in the bank and a bunch of lawyer friends or people that could cut you a check on day one. So they didn't see you as viable.
Right. But, that fundraising component, that piece, I mean, it would have been very easy for me to have sold a line. We could have been very well funded if I sold a line to the tourism industry that I was pro-tourism, how they want it to be. And I can spin that narrative. I could do that all day long, and we could have gotten that, but going in to make a conscious effort and say, I'm not taking any money from special interests. I'm not taking any money from developers. And not because I think that all special interests, by the way, are bad. I don't think all special, I would consider like environmental organizations that advocate for the environment and lobby are special interests as well. I don't think all special interests are bad. And I don't think all developers are bad. But the narrative that I wanted to have is that when people come to the Board of County Commissioners and you're standing at that podium and you're basically begging for somebody to hear your voice so that you will vote how they're begging you to represent them.
Yep.
And how sad that you should have to feel to go to your local government that I have to beg this board for you to hear me, to represent me the way that I want you to represent me.
Mostly Democrat board too.
Yeah. And I wanted it to be abundantly clear that because I'm not taking developers' money, because I'm not taking special interests, I'm unbought, I'm unbossed, and I am fighting for you. Like, give me your voice and I will say it. I may not actually even agree with it, but it's my job to represent people. And I don't ever want to be putting people in a predicament where I was with former Commissioner Ted Edwards, where it didn't matter how we begged, how we spoke, what we presented, there was no winning because he was going to represent the developer. And so I just wanted it to be really clear. So we accepted that, coming in, we were going to be totally outfunded by like lots of millions, and we were. And
by the way, she keeps saying it was all her. All I did was put a camera in front of her and make sure that the fights that she was fighting for the rural boundary, for Split Oak, she was the face of it. And I wish Democrats...
But it was a total we had so many volunteers. So
100%. 100%. I helped with the campaign.
Ernest, you did all the communication. That's not.
But again, like they didn't. When I say the party infrastructure didn't see you as viable until we had to prove your message, your voice, and then you started getting a lot of help. But I want to stress that point.
But it's kind of fair. I got to say it's fair. Like, you got to expect people to prove themselves, and I don't have any qualms about.
No, Susan Placencia did not prove herself.
No, she still hasn't proved herself. She doesn't show up to a legislative
House District
delegation.
37. She did not prove herself. And frankly, Steve Leary, when he was running against you, was barely anywhere, even at the Republican events.
Well, he was everywhere because he was in everybody's mailboxes because he was so well funded by special interests.
Yeah, exactly.
So he was everywhere. It just wasn't that he himself was in front of people.
Right. And
we knocked on like I used to know the exact number. It's like 42,600 doors.
Yeah. And your plantar fasciitis.
My foot. Never been the same.
She blames me. But I stress this because I want Democrats and Republicans to take a page out of this book. Show up, answer your phone when people call, be on the front lines of the fight with the people, whatever fight it is in the community that you're trying to represent, and actually have something you care about that you're bringing to the forefront. I think why...
And I just want to say, in summary, just don't represent special interests.
Yeah.
That's it. Like if you want to represent some, just don't represent special interests over people. And you know what? We will all go home and agree all day long on that statement.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of times what I'm told as a political consultant now, is, well, we can't bring, a knife to a firefight, meaning we can't have every candidate be grassroots because they'll be outfunded by 5 or 6 times by the special interests. They have to have some viability in how much money they bring up front. My argument to that is the money will come if...
The money doesn't come.
No, you raised a decent amount for being a mom in the sticks.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, you have to have something worth fighting for and a real message and a real agenda with real data, because voters are not stupid, to sell to the public, and people will donate, people will volunteer, people will come and wrap resources. There were so many times at the beginning that you were like, what are we doing? And I was like, Kelly, just continue to do these meet and greets, continue to do these TikTok videos, continue to just like control the narrative of what your agenda is, and people will fall in love with you and respect you. And I remember close to the end of the campaign, there were several people that came to me and they were like, I was going to support the other Dem in the race or the other Republican in the race, but I couldn't stop seeing Kelly everywhere speaking to these issues to the point where it was like relentless. And I felt like I had to support her because like, where is everybody else?
But we got so lucky because District 5 is such a big district. It's taking up 2/3 of the county. And what we had was like mini campaigns within the campaign. So we had a Save Orange County base in the east that could run an east side campaign, and I could go there. We had a Winter Park Maitland sub campaign that could run everything in Winter Park Maitland, and I could go there. And then we had you and your communications team and working across, pushing everything across the whole district.
Digitally.
So we got really lucky in terms of we were able to have different camps set up because there were such different issues.
This is what I get for having a humble person that like, I need to force this compliment down your throat. You had 20 years of trust building with the Save Orange County people to get them to even want to knock on doors for you. And then you had new people that didn't know who you were, that frankly didn't like that you were more living in the rural side because they felt like you weren't going to represent them in like the downtown Winter Park area, that you were able to convince with your economic background and with the data and with the policies that you were very strong about. And I remember this one line that you said, because we were talking about affordable housing and this was kind of in a wealthier area and people were like not about hearing about homelessness and affordable housing. And you said it in the perfect way. You said, don't you want your grandkids to live near you? But if your kids are getting priced out that they have to move counties, if not states away, then you're going to miss out on memories in your neighborhood because our local economy is basically being robbed and people can't afford to live here. And that's what convinced new people that have never heard of you to buy into you because you had that heart too.
Yeah. And even right now, it's still happening. Like our greatest export in Orange County is our kids and our future generation. That's our greatest export, which is the continuity of families. That means that you get used to having a long distance family relationship because your kids will not be able to afford to live in Orange County.
Because you call it brain drain.
It's a brain drain. Yeah, you have a really great institution, lots of great educational institutions here. They get a good education. Our jobs don't pay livable wages. They look for somewhere else that's more affordable where they can have a higher quality of life, and they take their talent there. And it doesn't do anything to help fix the low wage economy we have here.
So, in closing, like you're now a commissioner We did it. Sometimes I look at you and I'm like, can you freaking believe?
Do you remember the lollipop on my jacket?
I look at you and I'm just like, you're a commissioner. You're like, Lee, I have my kid's lollipop is stuck to my jacket. I'm like, you are a commissioner. You did it. It still doesn't feel like it like hit, because it's like that grassroots and that much of a hurdle, but you did it. Now you're in there and it's just been pedal to the floor ever since day one. Like, I thought I was going to come in and volunteer for a couple days. And I stayed working with you for a year. And now I'm like still volunteering. Yeah. And you can't get rid of me for some reason. And like, it feels like every day you got to mobilize on a big press conference. There's another emergency. And you're like bringing the narrative to another level, because this is my opinion. A lot of commissioners they've been there longer than you. Mm-hmm. They should be the face of the fight. And yet I don't see them in the press anywhere as much as you.
But you know what? This was the difference. Remember how people kept saying it's not good to have an activist on the stand. Yeah. You want to have a politician. Steve Leary. You want to have a politician on the stand. That's the job, being a politician. And I think that what District 5 truly is that, and I know myself, I'm an activist to the core, and I advocate for change constantly because something can always be made better. You are an activist to the core. The entire District 5 team, they are activists and advocates, but not one of them is a politician. Yeah. So none of them pay lip service. We've got an agenda and we've only got 4 years now, only 3 years to try to get some things done. And
then you run again, and then they're going to throw more trash at you.
We're only guaranteed 3 more. So we got stuff to get done. And that's what we use this opportunity for. And it also makes me a little bit rogue up there because I didn't run for a political office for a career or for a job. I ran for the intention of making a change, of being able to supply a platform for the difference to happen, to save land instead of constantly irresponsible development, to have a high labor market instead of having the lowest in the nation, So I ran for that. And if they throw me out of office doing it,
at least you put your head on that pillow.
I went to go to bed and I go to bed, sleep, and I say, I did my best, and that's how I've looked at, all the threats that came from Tallahassee. You got to sign this or do this or you get removed. Well,
so first of all, that was a Steve Leary quote when he was trying to, on the debate stage say that we don't need an activist showing up with her pitchfork on the dais. She's not going to get anything done. And you've been like bringing your pitchfork to work every day. But then I remember when you were being threatened to be, if you didn't vote yes on the 287G agreement for our local corrections and law enforcement to comply and work with, ICE and bringing people to Alligator Alcatraz using our tax dollars at a huge deficit on our backs. They were going to remove you and fine you and potentially throw you in jail. And I remember that conversation, and I'm like trying to keep my political analysis hat on and walk through every option and what the immigration coalition would say if you voted with them. What would happen if you voted against it? Where would your kids go? Could your kids stay with me? Your husband was actually abroad at the time for family. And I remember we're like both crying. I'm outside of a restaurant. We're both like crying on the phone. And you just say, I don't care. I can't put my head down on that pillow and know that I voted for that. Yeah. And that's all that matters. She's like, if we were in Nazi Germany, would I vote yes on transporting Jews? Like, this is my Nazi Germany, basically, moment where I have a decision and it's in front of me and I have to make that choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you voted with the people.
Voted with the people. And I think that as long as somebody gave me some really great advice and said, as long as the people are your North Star, you can never vote wrong. Even if you don't agree with them, it's your job to vote that way, and you can help guide, decision-making and stuff, but your job to represent the people. So, the people showed up that day. And even when I was up on the stand, I was nervous that, I still, I'm should I do it? Should I do it? Should I not? Should I not? Because the scariest thing is not being removed from office. It's when somebody threatens to fine you and fee you so that you don't have money for your family, take you away from your family, and put you in jail when you have little kids. And the scariest thing about that is that this is the fucking United States of America. Are you telling me that if I don't vote how you tell me to vote, you're going to fine me, fee me, put me in jail, and remove me from my elected seat? Like, that's where we are. And the things that you're threatening over are, it's so bizarre because, Republicans have a much more conservative faith. They are the more faith, based,
at least in branding.
In branding, politics. And here you have the greatest faith-based brand that helped alleviate or helped advocate for homelessness is Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so while everybody is walking around with a cross on their neck, the people that are up in Tallahassee claiming to be Christians are executing a law to arrest homeless people if they're sleeping on a bench outside and to put them in jail. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the first threat that came, that you have to agree to do this. Otherwise, you can be fined, feed, jailed, and put in jail.
And it's like, when does it stop? Would it ever stop? Will these bills just keep coming? And basically, what's the point of having a local elected official if you just have to comply with whatever the state says?
Yeah, that's no point.
That's what I think this property tax fight is they want to make every local government so dependent on the state that they have to comply to ask for every red penny, or else they're just going to be poor.
I mean, people have to just really understand the very basics of budgeting. Wherever you give relief in one area, you have to take more from in another area. Mm-hmm. And so if it's important, and you know what, I would love to give everybody property relief, tax relief. I would love for nobody to have to pay property taxes. That would be incredible. But then you better be able to make your money somewhere else, or you better be willing to give up services like your public safety, because then it's the biggest defund the cops effort ever that we've seen in Florida. Or you better be prepared that instead of using public school education, you can only use private, but none of their teachers have to be certified or have a degree in that. You have to be willing to give up services.
Firefighters.
Give up your firefighters, give up your police, give up your public schools, give up your
infrastructure, your roads, your
garbage being picked up once a week. And maybe we only go to bi-weekly. You have to be willing to give up services that are going to pinch your life and make you uncomfortable or make you feel unsafe. Mm-hmm. And even if we think that, you look at the lesser degree of those where it's like, we'll just give that relief to seniors whose homes are paid off. Well, there's still a deficit that's created. And the only solution that they have for it is to raise sales tax. So now, you're middle class, I'm middle class, so now consider that the middle class gets no property tax relief, but now they get a higher sales tax. Well, now you're putting a lot more burden on middle class and down, and it is nothing but a regressive tax system. That is baffling to me, that we would go to a system where anyone would consider, giving 100% property tax relief. Where does the money come from?
And obviously, I don't want people to feel pain, and I don't want services to go unmet, and I don't want people to be shipped off to Alligator, Alcatraz, or God knows what. But there is a part of me that is almost like, the more extreme they get, maybe this will be in the long term better for us from a partisan way, because it's going to impact every single person's lives to the point where maybe the Republican will vote for the Dem that's vocal about these issues, or maybe a real Republican will combat the establishment Republicans that are forcing this narrative, and it'll shake us to the core so much that we might actually become more politically unified, is my hope, so that we can work together to get real leadership like you. Because, I'm so glad that we got to meet and work together and get this close, because I would feel so lost if I didn't have a fighter like you right now. Think about that. I know so many other people that are watching this are thinking the same thing. Rep. Escamani, Senator Carlos Gilmer-Smith, we have awesome state leaders, but they're such a minority. And for years, going to the county commission, mostly yelling at Dems that don't even answer their emails, all of a sudden you come in and you're taking meetings, you're sitting down for hours, you're helping write talking points at 10 o'clock at night. You are with the people. And I think your future, even though I know you say you might have to run away if the Blue Ribbons Project goes into effect, but you could become so influential to create more leaders like you with your endorsement, with your mentorship. I'm excited to see where you evolve politically, and I'm so grateful to have had a little chapter in your political book, and honored that you get to be my political mama. And so every end of each podcast, I ask a question. With all the good work that you're doing, what is your replenishment of your energy?
Oh, the recharge?
How do you recharge? Is it a show? Is it a hobby? How do you recharge? Is it your 10,000 animals you're feeding every morning?
No, they exhaust me. They exhaust me. So that's interesting because I assess people, right? Like I look at, I watch their behavior and I can see, I can see people and be like, she or he is recharging right now. And it always makes me smile because everybody needs that recharge. And, I personally think for me that my recharge is in the classroom. So I still, I always say that one job should be enough. Well, I'm working 2 jobs, full-time jobs. But when I go into the classroom with my students and you can be a part of, you can teach somebody something that is important to you, that you believe in, that you can fact-based check it scientifically, it's good to go. And you can teach that to the next mind and they carry that out of your classroom. Oh, that chokes me up because that's my recharge.
And we got her to cry, ladies and gentlemen. We did it.
But that's my recharge. I mean, that's the most powerful thing you can do is for your community and society is to keep passing on the good stuff.
Well, it wouldn't be a perfect podcast without me crying. Kelly, you recharge us.
Oh.
And I know that a lot of people, excuse me.
Shit,
I think this is number 5 on the podcast that I've cried.
Stop it.
But thank you. But you are a beam of hope because it's getting so bad. And I'm so disappointed in some of our local leaders that have been silent in a lot of these fights. I take it personally now that I'm in politics because like you, I thought I was going to be a teacher and just get to live my life and have a family. And then I started learning about climate change in college, and I started realizing that we're being sold out. We're literally being screwed, our generation and the next. And so I'm choosing not to have a family. And, other than my husband, I'm not having kids. And I'm not.
Your husband is your
my
kid.
husband is my family and my child. No. And I'm choosing to go into politics when I had a completely different career path because I feel like if we don't fight now, we're going to lose everything. And sometimes it can be really dark being a grassroots politician, or political leader because you are such a super minority. There's Republicans, Democrats, libertarians, all these other designations. And then there's the grassroots people that just say no to those special interests. And we're such a tiny little blip politically that you feel hopeless sometimes.
Yeah.
But when I see you on that dais and I see you out in the community, and even those moments on the campaign trail when you were so nervous that you literally felt like you were going to throw up before you had to speak, and then you go up there and you give the best speech ever. Like, take my breath away. Like, I'm crying and holding the camera. And then you come off the stage, you're like, I have no idea what I just said.
Embarrassing.
You are that recharge for us in the community fighting every day for human rights and for environmental justice. And with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. But that the person, what's scary about politics is when you say that you're in politics, when an activist runs, it leaves a hole on the activist side. And so when you get an activist elected, that's great because they're going to vote right and they're with you and they can recharge and help bring more people. But the movement has to continue to push from the people because you can't flip votes otherwise. And we find ourselves in that situation of always needing that one vote, that one swing vote,
But if we can take anything away from this podcast, it's that if you don't have the special interest backing you, and if you don't have a ton of money going into running for office, you can still do it.
Yeah.
And that's making new leaders, because now new leaders can grow up and meet you and hear your story and say, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
Absolutely. And it's about, and then we got to give chances to the unusual, to the person that is not the cookie cutter coming along and just talking about simple Democrat values, but that are actually talking about values that cut across party lines, where both sides are willing to come out and to fight for it. That's where we get people into office.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Kelly Martinez Semrad.
Thank you
for coming out for our therapy session. And I hope you all will please come and visit our website, organizingtovictory.com, and visit kellysemrad.com to get involved with her office. Just because she's not running a campaign doesn't mean she's not doing events all the time and educating people along the way about what's happening in their local government. So thank you for your leadership.
Oh, thank you.
Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you heard today, please comment, subscribe, and share. And visit organizingtovictory.com so that you can learn more about all the ways that we're going to be organizing this year. It is the most important election year of our lives. I know you hear that all the time, but we here at Organizing to Victory hope to not just talk about the issues, but to organize around the issues. So please share, subscribe, and follow us. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.